Welcome everybody to this session. I'll slide right into the, oops, no, I won't. I'm going to slide into my presentation. I think somewhere in the write-up of the presentation right here, there should be a link to this presentation. It's presented right at just below the screen there, but I will put it in the chat as well, just in case you're not seeing the link, just below my picture on your screen. Okay, this is going to be as interactive as I can make it for you. So let's get started, and we'll start from the beginning would be best. Okay, so my name is Ewan Geddes. I'm currently a Department Head of Geography, History, and Social Sciences at York Mills Collegiate in Toronto. There's my email if you have any questions at the end, or if you want to put your questions in the chat. If I can get to them, I will. But also after we're all done, if you are able to follow along with this link, I have a ArcGIS survey 123. I would like you to give me some feedback on the presentation. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at embedding geographic literacy and spatial technologies into the classroom. And I'm going to share with you a few examples of how it can be done. And then one of the biggest things that we're doing by embedding geographic literacy and spatial technologies into the classroom is we'll be embedded using the Geographic Education Learning Framework as well. The parts that we're going to be focusing on in this session will be geographical informed citizens, so helping our students become more informed and make decisions to the best of their ability with as much information as possible, and getting into some problem-based learning and just becoming citizen scientists at the end. We're going to be looking at the geographic inquiry skills and developing those, how they can be asking questions again, be more informed, as well as developing spatial skills or geospatial skills using different technologies. And I'm going to put it out there right away. My big bias toward the spatial technologies is leaning toward the ArcGIS Online suite of software, like spatial journals, StoryMaps, and Survey 123. But I'll also show some examples of things like Squirrel Maps and Google, because a lot of people are using Google My Map. And then the last concept is embedding the concepts of geographic thinking into our lessons. Unfortunately, with sharing my screen and my slideshow, I'm not able to see the chat. So I'll be able to get to that at the end if you have any questions. Okay, what I would like to do now is just have a look at Survey 123. And I like to use Survey 123 with my students right at the beginning of class, just to, they can September ask where they may have traveled to during the summer, or where they got around to in the city, the province, the country, the world, wherever. So what I would like you to do, if possible, is click on the link here, ArcGIS. So I created a survey right here, and I've asked this of several teachers. I've done a few workshops this summer, and I've had the participants just fill out this brief survey, types of vacations you might like to take, or maybe something you have done. Okay, so the duration of it, accommodation type, the method of transit. This is just really getting used to Survey 123 and creating a map. So we're going to put in a location. And then at the end, after you've filled it all, submit. So when you're putting in the location, if you have the actual city, the address, you can put it in here, like ArcGIS Online. And then don't forget to submit when we're done. Okay, so if everybody could take a moment and try that, and what I will fill out the survey, and what I'll do is just take a quick peek into into the chat, see if anything is happening yet. Oops. Okay, not seeing too much. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to go back to the presentation. Hopefully, oops, I shouldn't be there yet. Hopefully you've had a chance to fill this out. So I've shared this in Survey 123, so everybody should have access to it. What I've also done is shared the results with you, so it's just another link. So if we go into the results, we can see the results of this survey. And then we can start to analyze the data that we've just collected. And one thing with going live is we are dependent on the network at my house, and hopefully it works all right. So right away, we can see a lot of people have responded to this email. Things you can do in ArcGIS. So with Survey 123, we can get into analyzing the data that we've just collected. So we can see here that most people, and not surprising, oops, went too far, type of vacation. So most people in our in the survey have decided to go sightseeing. Not so many have decided to visit relatives, I guess, because we see enough of our family during the year, and on vacation, maybe we don't want to. The duration of the trip, again, not surprising, seeing teachers have off in the summer, let's say, going for 7 days or more. And then we can look at some of the other results, accommodation type. As you've noticed here, there's a few different ways we can look and examine the data. We can have column, bar, create a bar chart, pie chart. Okay, pretty interesting. And then all of these things can also get put into a map. So here's just looking at a little distribution. We can also look at the data. If we type a vacation, we can look at it in the map, in ArcGIS Online map, so we can see the different types of where the different type of vacation and where they would like to visit. You can collaborate with Survey 123, which makes it a nice tool for students collecting data. So here you can share the survey, which is what I've done with you. You can also share the results and then update things. So this is a way students can collaborate together working on a project. One other thing, if we go to data, and when you share the results with the students, they have access to this. The students then can do a few things. You can export the data in a spreadsheet if you like to. You can export it as a shapefile. You can export it as Excel or CSV, or you can go directly into ArcGIS Online and have a look at it when you open it up in Map Viewer. And this will look will look familiar to people who have been using ArcGIS Online and may not have used Survey 123 at this point in time. Okay, so here's our map. I'm just going to go to full screen so we can see everything. So if we go to the content here, we can then, if we want to, we can start to, we can filter out different things, accommodation types. So we can just look for this filter if we wanted to. If we wanted to change symbol, we can create a heat island to have a look to see where most people in my survey have decided to travel to. And a lot of people traveling to Europe, but really it's a nice distribution of all over the place. If we go to single, that's the single, or we could show by location. You could vacation type. So now the map is going to show vacation type. And for people that have used ArcGIS Online, you can start to manipulate the data in other ways. Okay, so I'm not this session is not teaching you how to manipulate the data. It's just how to embed or how to use the different tools in ArcGIS. One thing that we can also do that I didn't mention earlier is create a story map. So when this has been saved, and then I'll just do a quick save as and Geo Ed. We always have to put tags in. Okay, save the map. So here's our map. I can share it, and then it's going to give me a URL. Who do I want to share it with? So I'm just going to say for everybody for now. The story map, when we've created this map, we want to tell a story, like communicate our results. We can go to create a web app. And the web app that I like to get my students started on first, build a story map, is using the map journal. I find this one to be the easiest. And I just want to give the students a chance to practice. And then at that point, they can select the different templates, not a problem. And to create your story map, you can select this story map here, create web app. We're going to use the same map that we've just created from our travel survey. And I just want to show you how to get started in case you haven't. And then at this point, this is the map we're going to use. So I can select the arrow over here. And to get started, so I'm not going to create a map because we've already started creating our map, the Geo Ed survey map. You can manipulate, custom configure different setups, but I'm just going to use the defaults. Click next to get started. Put in some information here for the side panel, which is where the story comes into play. And then we've started our map. So like a slideshow presentation, you can add in new sections. And this is just gives us new heading. We can zoom into the map. We can custom configure the location so we can zoom into an area where we would like to zoom in. Save map location. Next, put in some information. Add, and now my story begins, and it's interactive. Pop up, it tells us what's happening at these points, and then you can, whatever the story is you're sharing, you can put the information in the panel, side panel. You can put some information in the pop-ups. You can put in when you go to add, this is for your story map, you can put in images and videos just to expand on your communication piece. Okay, so that quickly now is how we can get started with ArcGIS Online, and then we can start getting into the concepts of geographic thinking. Oops, we've done that one. When we start looking at the concepts of geographic thinking, which is one of the pieces in the geographic framework from Geo Ed, we can start to analyze this map. We'll just go to symbol again. I should have saved this last time. We'll go to type of vacation and done. So now we can start to analyze, looking for patterns and trends, maybe geographic perspective, why people are in a certain place, spatial significance, what's important about certain locations. And then we can tell a story from our research. So right there is a relatively quick and easy way to get started using Survey 123, creating a ArcGIS Online map to manipulate the data, and then creating a story map to tell our story. Okay, we're going to move on. How are we doing? Oh, thanks, Lise, for your help. Great. And Samantha and Carol, thank you for participating. Hopefully it continues to work. So yeah, thanks for participating in that survey. What we're going to do now is just move on with the rest of the presentation. So when we're the point of, oops, what did I do? Okay, here we go. We're doing all right. The point of doing this is then we can set up for assessment evaluation. And I'm in Ontario, so this is the assessment evaluation based on the Ontario curriculum. But the geographic framework, or the Ontario curriculum, has embedded parts of the geographic framework that I showed earlier. And a big part that we're looking at is developing the inquiry skills and the concepts of geographic thinking. So I'm not too worried about using strand A or anything like that. What it looks like for achievement or creating rubrics. Here's an example of the things that we are evaluating, and we have the interrelationships, the concepts of geographic thinking, spatial skills, spatial technology, process methodologies using the geographic inquiry model. Then we also disciplinary problem solving. So this is problem-based learning using the software to encourage the students to come up with questions that they can then gather data and answer. And the strand A part, which we focus on a lot, which is the geographic inquiry process, and the transferable skills, GIS skills. As many of you have had discussions with students and other people, it's like, well, what can you do with geography? And it's endless what you can do with geography, especially when you look at the transferable skills and how they apply. So what I like to show my students, it's a little old now, 2018, but it's Canada's Best Jobs 2018. And the link at the top will take you to the main page. But before I show students this, I'll ask them what kind of job are they thinking of. And then when we look at the top jobs in Canada, 2018, it was the utilities manager, which is a geographic job. When you're looking at where the utilities locate, so we're looking at the geographic, the concepts of geographic thinking, spatial significance, and interrelationships, patterns, and trends. And then there's a whole list of jobs. And I just went through this really quickly. These are some of the jobs that have geographic skills are directly related to geography. The specialized engineer is agriculture or naval. So agriculture, there's geography. With pilot, flying, instructor, and so on, there's geography because there's understanding of GIS and GPS involved. And the list goes on. So I also embedded here the link for Canada's Best Jobs 2019. Utilities manager, I think, is number 3 now. So I like to show this one because geography teacher, I want to show the importance, and utilities manager is a pretty good one. So what can be done in the classroom to make it straightforward for the students is the inquiry model, the geographic inquiry model that came from using Gertzner's definition of geography of what's where, why there, why care, and incorporating the different pieces of it. So we're looking at gathering, organizing data, interpreting and analyzing data, evaluating, drawing conclusions, and communicating. And because it's set up in this framework, when we develop a question, or when the students develop a question, they can go and start to gather and organize data. They may find that their question may change, and it's fine to go back and change the question and then see what data, how the data supports that. And one of the examples I like to share with my students, and some of you may have heard of or watched the movie, I think it's called Shark Water, where the producer, the diver, wanted to find out why sharks were on the decline. So that was the question. Then they went out to gather and organize data. And as they started to go through the data, they came across the shark finning and the issues of that. So then his question changed, and then the conclusions changed, and then he came up with a different communication piece at the end, dealing with the illegal practice of shark finning and so on. So this is a nice little graphic to share with students, so that we can get into looking at real world problems. And when we start to use the geographic question, okay, what? Okay, we want to find out the what is happening. And then after we've done that, we're going to go along with the so what. So we have a look at the data. So what does this all mean? So we have a fire, we have neighborhoods. So this one's Fort McMurray, as we can see here, but we could be looking at things that are going on right now, patterns and trends. So you have the so what, and then after that, we get the next part. What are we going to do about it? So we've analyzed the data, we're taking a closer look at what's going on, then we're drawing conclusions. And there's a few ways to help guide students with this. And some of you may have seen this, the questioning grid. This is a pretty good start. I'm not too fond of this because it tends to highlight the bottom right as being the best questions, and sometimes all questions are very important. And sometimes we really need to know the what or the where first before we can ask some other questions. So a colleague of mine came up with this framework that he shared in his class, dealing with the different levels of questioning. So all questions are important, but we have the robot or surface type question, the what, the where, the who, the when. Then we have more of the detective. Why is this happening? What causes? How is this a problem? Then we get into the judging. Who might, in your opinion, what should happen? And then the final step would be the inventors. How might this be prevented in the future? What would you do to prevent this? So this is a nice framework to show students, because when they're developing their own questions, sometimes they may be stuck with the robot or detective questions, but then you can work with those questions and the students to try and progress to the higher level questioning, so they can get to their answer. Okay, so what it looks like in the classroom. With the grade 9 activities and looking at the curriculum that was developed, we're going to be looking at our strand B is interrelationships. So this is just some excerpts from the curriculum. So the idea, the guiding inquiry questions that were provided. How do the natural characteristics of Canada influence human activities, and how might human activity influence Canada's natural disasters? So there's many different ways that this could take us, and this came from the Ontario curriculum. And these are some of the tasks. So we can look at climate change impacts, climate change action in my community. So we listed here are the different concepts of geographic thinking that each of these activities could meet, the different steps in the inquiry process, because early on in the course, the students may need a little bit of help developing their inquiry process. And some of the tools that can be used then to map out their data, Google My Map, I have a link here. This is going to my own Google My Map, so it may work with you or may not work for you. I'm not too sure. But if you are if your board is Google or your Google Gmail account, you'll be able to access it. And then you can create your maps here. Again, I'm not going to go into detail on really how to create, but just to get started, you create a new map. And then you can search for places. Oops, yeah, you can put in names here, whatever you want to search, and then it will search. You know what? I am from Toronto, so you know what? I'm going to put York Mills. see if my high school, oh, there it is there. And this is where my high school is. So this is just getting started. And this is, depending on the grade level that you're teaching, this is a very easy way to get started and start looking at spatial significance or patterns and trends. We can add it to the map right away. We can edit the pop-ups. You can put information in here, whatever you like. You can add pictures and so on. So this is a very good tool to get started with, and it is similar to ArcGIS Online, but ArcGIS Online you can do a lot more of the analysis, which is really nice. ScribbleMap is another tool powered by Google. It's you can do a little bit more than just my map. I do believe you need a subscription to this, so we can get started. Create your own map. And the technology is working. It's a little slow, but we're getting there. And this will start to look a little bit more like ArcGIS Online. Here, let's get rid of this, because there's a few more things we can do. We will have the different satellite images you can play with. You can add in pictures. You can draw some lines, some different coloring, put in points, create areas. So there's a bit more you can do with a scribble map. You can create a legend, so a bit more like an actual map. And then, of course, the last one I have here, which is ArcGIS Online, and this is going to be my Toronto subscription. Many boards in Ontario now have full access to ArcGIS Online, and then they can just get started with creating a map once they click My Map, and then they can get into creating the spatial journal. So we won't get into that so much because I would like you to explore that on your own time. But I do also have where this now fits in with the global competencies and having the students become citizen scientists. So my students did an extreme weather inquiry, and here's the final result of one of those inquiries, which was a story map. These were grade 9 students. Some had ArcGIS experience, many have not before I saw them in grade 9. And at the end, they created their own story map. So here's one of the students who I thought did quite well. She has the map of Toronto, some pop-ups here giving some information about different communities and how it might be impacted by extreme weather. And we're looking at extreme cold. So each pop-up has some information with regards to the different situations or the different impacts of extreme cold. They went through, gathered the data, mapped out the information, and at the end, they then came up with an action plan that the city of Toronto could implement, maybe what parts of Toronto were impacted the most, which ones needed the most help, and things like that. Right now, looking at COVID in Toronto, it's very clear which communities were hit hardest by COVID, and then they could look at some economic reasons, transportation reasons, similar to extreme cold. So they gathered the data, analyzed data, created their story on what potentially would need to happen. And then we can just click on the process, looking at infrastructure and how it was impacted by extreme weather. Then her conclusion would have been making a suggestion on how the city could prepare for the next extreme weather event because of global warming or climate change, and then, of course, having the bibliography to support her work. So this activity, the students were using creativity, inquiry, and entrepreneurship to design an action plan. We looked at the problem solving by examining the data and mapping out the potential solution. And then the communication piece was the story map. The data they used was exploring Toronto Open Data. So this link here just takes you to the Toronto Open Data web page. Oops, sorry, I didn't want to do that. We don't need to waste time with that, but if you're interested in looking at it, you can. And here's the example of the evaluation that was given to the students so that they could produce this final piece of work. So this evaluation has been worked on by myself and a few other teachers. We're looking at extreme weather event here. So you should have access to the slideshow, and because you have access to the slideshow, you'll have access to this Word document, but you'll have to download it onto your own computer and then manipulate it any which way you would like. So this was looking at extreme weather. So students gathered some information about the different types of extreme weather, extreme cold, thunderstorms, heat, so on, looking at the geographic definition of what is where, why, there, and then why care. We're looking at creating, filling out these graphic organizers to support the students in their learning. Some students don't need the supports, others do need these graphic organizers, so they're embedded there. Then when they examine the different types of weather-related events, they can point, form, fill in this graphic organizer, and then they'll pick the one that they're most interested in. Then they'll fill out the Venn diagram, looking at some of the environmental impacts, social impacts, and economic impacts, looking from the geographic perspective. And of course, keeping track of their sources so as not to plagiarize. And then they will develop their action plan. And this is only a 3-part action plan. They can create it a bit more elaborately if they like. And this is a nice framework then, which turns into their story map. So each row here becomes a different slide in the story map. And then some ideas and suggestions on how to create the story maps, different things, techniques to embed to make the story map more engaging for the participants. And then there's a little bit of peer and self-evaluation, the rubric, and then there's a list of, should be some resources here for this. Oh, here we go, the Toronto Star Reading or other related resources. And these cards here can come from a climate change website for Toronto. If you're modifying it for your own city or region, I'm sure you'll be able to find other related information. So that is one tool that will take the students through the geographic skills, the geographic inquiry, spatial technology, gathering, organizing data, problem-based learning, and then coming up with a conclusion for themselves. I'm just going to check, see how we're doing with chats and so on. No, we're okay. So still moving along. So the other one is managing Canada's resources. Again, a little description of what students could be doing. This is, again, set up for the grade 9s, but it can easily be modified for students of different age groups. Here, the tool Survey 123, ArcGIS Online, and then there's a textbook that is used by a few schools in Ontario, Geography in Action, which has GIS activities related to it. I'm just going to go into Survey 123 a bit more for the people who may not have had the chance to see how you can create your own survey. So I do have a few surveys here. I use it in my classroom all the time, textbook resources. So when I sign out my textbooks for my students, I have them fill out a Google survey. And so just getting started with the new survey, it is, here, let me back up. It is pretty straightforward, and I do love how it guides you through the process. So click on new survey, get started. There's a few different get starters, but this is the one which sets up right away into your browser. You can save it online. So name, I'll just put and Geo Ed again, tags Ed, you can, and I'm going to create, it does take some time to create sometimes, so hopefully it goes through quickly. I'm not going to create a whole survey. I just want you to see the different types of questions that you can create, and different types of questions you can ask, because this is the powerful piece of this tool. So you can have single line text, you can go into multiple choice questions, and then you can go to add. What I would suggest whenever you're creating a survey 1, 2, 3 is to be explicit. So if you ask for single and consistency, so if you ask for the students to write, oh, what city did you like the best? And if they type it in, that's great. But if they type it in with a spelling mistake, let's say they spelled Toronto and they put the O at the end in the wrong place, then you're going to have, those would be two different categories. So by you filling out the information, it makes it a bit more accurate in your data. You can do ratings, number, time. You can add in images. You can only add in one map. So that's for the location. That's not a problem. You can do drop-down menus, single choice. So there's a wide variety of creating different questions to gather the data. When you go to collaborate, here's where I'd have to save. I'm not going to save it. We can examine here in the collaborate. You can then share all the results here. Make sure we save at the end. The design, you can change the design. You can go in and change the appearance. You can change the questioning around, and then manipulate it. I just went with the defaults. And I show my students the defaults, but I let them be creative and they can come up with their own. But that's how then they can use the survey 1, 2, 3 when they want to maybe create a map, gather data on where fishing or overfishing might be taking place in Canada. And then the nice thing that I showed earlier, the survey 1, 2, 3, is once you get the data, you can easily create a graph of your very own data. So that empowers the students. And it does, I think, engage them a little bit more. So here's an example of the resource management activity that some of my students did. This student decided to write a letter to the Minister of Natural Resources, talking about the findings that she found with the diamond mine. And what I did was I just took her map, because all my students had to create a map first of all, and I copied her map in here. Oops, so let's double click on there it is. And here's the map, because the map was embedded in the footer. Sorry about that. So if I just click on the link to this, and here is the not the story map, it's the spatial journal of fishing or of diamond mines in Canada based on the data that she had collected. Here it comes. I'm going to try closing down some tabs. Might speed it up a bit. It's coming. Just give it one more second. Okay, there it is. So the student used data that she found on ArcGIS Online, looking at Indigenous mining agreements, First Nations locations, and then had to look at where the diamond mines are. And then she came up with a solution on what could happen with diamond mines, how to make it maybe more environmentally sustainable, dealing with the communities in the north or in north of Toronto. And she then wrote a letter to the Minister of Natural Resources explaining her concern about diamond mining and communities that were impacted by the diamond mining. And what that looks like with regards to the activity is, again, problem-based learning, understanding the problem, and then, oops, here it is. You know what? Let me just escape for a second, because the link is on this page. Oh, that might be the link there. This link, what I wanted to show you was the actual activity of what the students were doing. And it should be, yeah, I think it's going to be a Word document or a Google Doc, and you can manipulate this the way that you would like. We again had the students examine different resource extractions in Canada, and then they pick the one that they're most interested in. There's a little worksheet that went along. Each of these is a short little engaging video about the resource, about 3 to 5 minutes. There's a little worksheet that the students were asked to fill in for each of them before they chose the one resource that they're interested in. They then looked at the different graphic organizers here. For example, spatial significance graphic organizer. And then you will have access to these resources as well. When you click on the links, they should be open to everybody. If any of these links are not open to you, please email me and I'll make sure they do get open. So again, this is just a graphic organizer for them to start filling in some information while they're collecting their data. So there's interrelationships, patterns and trends, geographic perspective. Okay, each one has a different PDF associated with it. Then they use their ArcGIS Online to create their map of where their resource was taking place. And then when they created their story map, what's where, why there, why care, they then either wrote a letter to the Minister of Natural Resources, or they created the spatial journal or the story map and shared that link with them. And then some letter writing framework here that they could follow was something to help them embed their geographic skills and create a letter to help persuade somebody to resolve their problem that they came up with. Okay, and then there's a rubric there for the evaluation piece. What it might look like with grade 12s now, because I did some activities for the grade 12s. There's going to be, we had some changing population. Grade 9s, but I don't have an example of the work for them. When they're looking at patterns and trends of changing populations, MapMaker, which is from National Geographic, is a tool that has many layers already there. So students don't have to gather all the layers. The layer is there and they can just examine the data and start looking at using the concepts of geographic thinking. What patterns and trends do they see? Maybe looking at the spatial significance of places, and then layers. So if we go to add layer, we'll get a list of the different categories you can put in. So you can look at water. There's going to be different water layers, climate and weather. It's moving a little slow, so I'm not going to go spend too much time. But if we put in, let's pick all renewable types, even see if we can add that to our map. And it looks like it did add in here at the bottom. And now we have a chloropleth map, and we have some information about the layer. We can click on data. It should give us some information. There's legend, layers, below is the layer. Okay. Now what's the data saying? No, there's not much data. So this is biomass, and it is a chloropleth map where most of the biomass is in the world. So the data is here. We can add in some other data if we wanted, all renewable types. So we can add in some other data. You can always look at one piece over another, but the network seems to be running slow on my side. So this is a tool that you can use that has the layers already embedded in it. And of course, the spatial journal, ArcGIS Online, which I've already shown. Students did a Coming to Canada resource, Stats Canada evaluation. So I hope I put in the grade 12 example, and if not, I'll put that in after for you. That was another slide I thought I dropped in. Here's a Coming to Canada evaluation when we looked at the immigrants coming into Canada and things they should know, like weather, economy, what kinds of jobs would be available to people coming in. And this could also be very timely with the number of people fleeing Afghanistan, trying to get out there, and what, if they're coming to Canada, what it might look like, what kinds of things might they be able to prepare possibly. And it takes the students, they look at the demographics of Canada, why immigration is important to Canada, where immigrants tend to settle, so that's patterns and trends, spatial significance. We need to look at some political, social, economic, environmental aspects of coming to Canada. And then again, students create a communication piece, usually a story map. Okay, an example of that would be a student example, but we can go on. Livable communities, same idea. And I think I did forget to put the grade 12s in here. That's global competencies. So ecological footprints. Students can, when we're looking at livable communities, they can look at how understanding their ecological footprints can help them create a more sustainable community and communicate to other people who may have the same footprint they have on little things to improve, to reduce the ecological footprint. So the bottom would be an example of the activity. So here's a summative evaluation plan. So this was a grade 9 all the way through it. Let me just, here's some grade 12 activities now. So I'm only going to show one, two, because we are getting toward the end of the session. When we look at globalization and world issues, the students were asked to create a in-roll speech about some NGO and understand how that NGO is their role in global affairs and the positives and negatives, so to speak. So here's what a student did looking at an NGO. They looked at the Aga Khan and kind of timely with what had happened with the Liberal government, or Trudeau, sorry, more specifically. So here's an example of a story map that this student created when they analyzed the Aga Khan Foundation. So it's coming in. We see the map at the back. They have little pop-ups here from their slides, little description of the foundation, what it does. And as we move from slide, the map should move also, yeah. So the initiatives, description again. And then when they looked at using the geographic inquiry, what's where, why there, and then why care, the why care. So they looked at the good and the bad parts of the organization and then came up with a conclusion on what, why it's good and what contribution it is making globally. And what that activity looks like. The students had an activity where they had to research different NGOs. A list was provided, but if they had other NGOs that weren't on the list that they would like to investigate, they were more than welcome to investigate them. They used this issues analysis tool. Just waiting for the network to catch up to me. So when they use the issue analysis, they would make a list of the different stakeholders involved in the issue. What is their position on the issue? What values do they have? What beliefs did they have? And how then, with all this data, the students would be able to have a better understanding of the issue itself. And when they had the list of the stakeholders, they could then take these stakeholders and map out where they were to see possibly if spatial significance had an impact on their values or belief systems. And then using this information, they could then move along to coming up with a potential solution, or in this case, we're trying to support an NGO, describe which NGO they would like to support because of the activities that they're involved in. And there's some supporting material here to help the students along with their gathering of information. This is going to be the last example of some student work and student worksheets that you can take right away and use in the classroom. Here's one that they wanted to create a public service announcement based on, I gave them this topic of chocolate, but they can pick another example if they wanted to. So this one here, the class, they actually used a survey 1, 2, 3 to collect data on the ingredients that go into making chocolate and map that out. And what they ended up with was this map here. And every student had access to this data from the survey, and they can manipulate it any way they wanted to. And here we have the pop-up of, so the yellow is coca, the green palm oil, blue milk. And this was the beginning. So they're finding out where the resources are located or where they tend to come from in making chocolate. Then on top of that, they put in these the circles to represent the GDP of countries involved. And then they start to look at patterns and trends, interrelationships, spatial significance, why, and then they came up with a conclusion, either what needed to happen with regards to the production of chocolate, consumption, distribution of the resource. And it was a very engaging activity, I thought, and the students did an excellent job presenting their work. And the activity is here again if you like to use it, manipulate it. By all means, there's a little video, 46-minute video. They used ArcGIS Online, like I mentioned earlier. They used the survey, the chocolate ingredients survey from survey 1, 2, 3. And then they had to do some research about certain terms. They get to know cash crops, banana republic, free trade, fair trade, and so on. And then they created their story map of what's where, why there, and why care. And the why care piece is kind of like, what next? What are we going to do about this problem that they've come up with, or in this case, that I presented to them? So those are a few examples of student work, student activity right away in the of using the different spatial technologies in the classroom. This is just specific to the Ontario curriculum, so I don't need to go through that. This is the home page for ArcGIS Online, and this is the TDSB homepage. Depending on your board, the homepage obviously will be a different URL, but there's a lot of really good resources in there. Scrolling across here, one of the resource finder is really nice way of getting tutorials, lessons, and even videos. So if you haven't had a chance to explore your own homepage, you should have a look at it. Other resources that are really good is Mapping Our World. I use this a lot with world issues. And if you go to the Mapping Our World, it gets you right into ArcGIS Online. There are student instructions, teacher instructions, even some examples of marking templates that you can use for the students. And they're set up for different levels. It's very nice. So if you go to the Mapping Our World and you click on this link at the top, oops. Oh, no, sorry, not that link, content. Go into content, Mapping Our World in content, and then you'll have a list of the different activities that can be found here. So there's a student answer sheet. So if you want to have the students evaluate themselves, the students worksheet, students direction, and it's a very useful tool. All the different lessons and different levels and it can be used from grade 9, grade 7, 8, 9. I'd put together all the way up to grade 12 without a problem. let's close some of those down. Some other resources I'd like to share with you. This is a grade 9 textbook that's used in Ontario, and there's a few really nice ArcGIS activities in there. So if you do have time, we have about 5 minutes left here, so I'm not going to go into each of these ones. But if you do have some time, have a look at them, and they can be very useful. What's nice, they're in a Word document that you can, or PDF that you can just edit and change to make your own. What I like to do with my grade 9 students, getting them started, or people who have not used ArcGIS, is this here 6x6. If you haven't seen it, it's a great starter. It has 6 activities that literally can get done. Each one takes about 6 minutes. And students or individuals using this can develop the necessary skills to get into creating their own maps. And every province has it set up a little differently. This is a 6x6 for Ontario. And there's different skills that the students will develop using this that will support them embedding ArcGIS or spatial technologies into their work that they do. Creating collaborative maps, exploring ArcGIS analysis using tables and tools, mapping spreadsheets and stuff. And a lot of this is actually done using Survey 1-2, like making the Survey 1-2-3 creates the spreadsheet. You can look at the tables and so on. So a little bit of the transfer of skills there. Here are some interactive maps from looking at some land claims and Indigenous. And these, I believe, are all using ArcGIS Online. So students will be very used to that. So something to have a look at there. These are some National Geographic, or Canadian Geographic interactive maps. I created a page that I share with my students. It's in my Google my Google folder, but there's some interactive maps so that you should have access to. Just makes it a little easier. They should all be available also on the website, on the Canadian Geographic website. And then, of course, the giant floor map, not an interactive map, but a very useful, well, no, totally interactive, but not digital. Very useful in the classroom. As I mentioned, there's MapMaker, some resources, National Geographic resources for teachers in the classroom. I know this is Canadian Geographic Education, but I will show some things here for education and National Geographic, because they do have lessons for teachers as well for the classroom. They are classroom ready. So you can have some classroom resources and so on, so you can look for and explore what you can use in the classroom. I'm looking at the time, we're at 3:43, so I'm just going to scroll along. Some other nice resources again from Esri here. You can explore, this is Ontario Education, ArcGIS stuff, so you can explore that. I do not work for Esri, but I do use their software in the classroom. There is a StoryMap challenge that you might be interested in if you get started on it early in September with your students using ArcGIS Online. I can't remember what it's dealing with, the oceans. I just don't know the actual title, Restoring Our Oceans. So you can have this incorporate this into your class as a culminating activity or something like that. Then there's also the Canadian Geographic Education competitions that can be found on their website. Some other great stuff from Esri, GIS Day. I'm not going to, please feel free to click on that. In Ontario, the Ontario OAG, Ontario Association of Geographic Environmental Educators, they do have some nice resources that you can become a member and get access to. There is from the Ontario Geography, Ontario History Consultants, and OAG again, the Summative Evaluation Plan for several courses in the Ontario curriculum. And these are resources to, let's just open the grade 9 one. It gives you a framework of the expectations and using the curriculum document. And it's kind of like a framework to build a course on. So if you're interested in this just for geography, if you're interested in those, by all means, but it looks like my network's slowing down a bit. Then, of course, Esri, and I'm just going to put in, if you have any questions, I talk with Jean Tong and Angela Alexander often at Esri. They are great resources and great resources across the nation. Okay, so I see 3:45. My time is up now. So I'm just going to say thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. The email is in the slideshow if you're interested. And I believe 3:45 our time is up. Is that correct? Okay. There's so much to go through. I hope this was good, and thank you very much for participating. And good luck come September. And if you have any questions, like I said, my email is in the slide. So that's my school email. Feel free to email me. I'll try to get back to you as fast as I can.